What is going on, Headliner Nation? Welcome to part 2 of our start and sit videos this week. Now, if you've missed it, there's already been one start and video that has dropped. Things are being done a little bit differently this week because with Christmas Eve on Tuesday and Christmas Day games on Wednesday, we had to get everything done and recorded on Monday so it could be done and out by Tuesday evening. So keep in mind, this video is going to be all of the games that are on Sunday or Monday night. The video that already posted has all the games that took place on Wednesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Now, one other note that I want to make, I already said it, these videos are being recorded on Monday to get them out to you in enough time. So as we're talking through some of these matchups, guys that are dealing with injuries right now, we don't have a whole lot of knowledge or information yet on what things are going to look like later in the week, which makes things even more difficult for this video because I'm talking about games that are still several days away. So I'll try to go through a few different scenarios with you on what could end up happening with some of these players, and hopefully some of that information just ends up holding true. But make sure you check back throughout the week, and we'll definitely have some rankings videos coming out later in the day on Tuesday in case anything else was updated for you. Our first game up is going to be the New York Jets at the Buffalo Bills, and this game may mean nothing to Buffalo by the time Kansas City is done, because if Kansas City wins their game on Christmas Day, they lock up the #1 seed. So there would be no reason to play anyone or any starter from the Buffalo Bills. And that could end up being huge for a lot of you out there that need them for the fantasy playoffs. Now, let's start with the New York Jets. We're going to take a look at Aaron Rodgers, Breece Hall, and Garrett Wilson all being medium risk players. And some of that could end up going up even a little bit higher if we find out later on that Buffalo isn't playing for anything. Because again, they could start resting starters and we could have a matchup where Rodgers, Hall, and Garrett Wilson are facing some second team type players. If that happens, Rodgers would become a low risk play for me. Breece Hall would become a low risk play for me. Garrett Wilson would stay at medium risk. Now, Devontae Adams is low risk no matter what. He's on fire right now, and we're going to continue to run him out there in our fantasy lineups. Aaron Rodgers is finding him early and often in games, and the same thing could happen against Buffalo. Tyler Conklin for me will be high risk, though. Not really worried about any of the tight ends in this matchup. And all the Buffalo players are going to be high risk right now because we don't know what's going to happen with this game. If the Kansas City Chiefs win, Josh Allen could end up sitting the entire game. James Cook may end up sitting, or he would only play a half. Some of the wide receivers could end up maybe only playing a quarter or a half. We could see different guys on and off the field. It's really hard to predict right now what could end up happening. Now, if the Kansas City Chiefs lose and Buffalo still has a shot at the 1 seed, then we're going to end up bumping all of these guys, right? Josh Allen becomes a low risk play. James Cook, probably a low risk play as well. Khalil Shakir becomes a medium risk. The rest of the wide receivers stay at high risk. Dalton Kincaid becomes a medium risk too. For Indianapolis and the New York Giants, there's only one player for the Colts right now that I look at as being low risk, and that's going to be Jonathan Taylor, who's actually going to be my Turtle Beach level up player of the week. Talk about an insane performance last week, carrying fantasy owners into their championships. And now we're going to need something maybe not similar, but still really, really good for him, because Jonathan Taylor coming on at the end of the season will be great for everyone that's been rolling with him so far this year. And he could single-handedly be the playoff MVP for fantasy football purposes if he has another huge performance today. And just like Jonathan Taylor is helping to level up fantasy lineups, Turtle Beach can do the same exact thing for your gaming setup. And people talk about how great their headphones are, and I agree, their headsets are absolutely incredible. But people don't really talk about their keyboards. Do you need a new mouse? Do you need a new controller? They've got you covered for everything. So if you're looking to take your gameplay to the next level, use Turtle Beach. And right now, if you use code word headliners at checkout, you're going to get 10% off your entire order. So head on over to turtlebeach.com, use code word headliners, and make sure that you level up your gaming setup today. It's hard to put Anthony Richardson at anything other than high risk. And even though Josh Downs is a guy that I absolutely would still consider, even for wide receiver 2 territory, it's hard to put him as a low risk risk just because of Anthony Richardson. Now, Richardson has been okay as of late, but he still has a lot of inconsistency issues. And Colts only had to throw the ball 11 times last weekend. Against the Jets, they may have to throw it a little bit more. And of course, we'll continue to wait on Alec Pierce to see if he can end up returning. Malik Neighbors is my only low-risk play for the Giants. Now, Wan'Dale Robinson is right behind him. He is a medium risk for me, but I do think he's very close to being low risk. Now, the difference here is that Malik Neighbors sees a lot of volume and he has a lot of big playability, which help raises his ceiling. Now, for Wan'Dale Robinson, he sees a lot of volume, but he doesn't have too many big plays. So while he does take a lot of that volume and give you decent output, unfortunately, it's hard for him to reach that ceiling, making him a little bit riskier than what Neighbors is. Drew Lock, we're not starting Drew Lock. We just need him to get enough targets to these guys. And Tyrone Tracy, I don't really trust him this week. I'm going to put him as a medium risk. And the split differential last week and the volume overall was not great, and that really had a lot to do with the score of the game. So I don't want to hold that against him too much, but as of recent, Devin Singletary is still getting a lot of touches. And if for some reason Indianapolis can get out to a decent lead, Tyrone Tracy could be in trouble in terms of how many carries he sees on the ground. Now, Dallas may not have much to play for anymore, but Philadelphia does, and they may be without Jalen Hurts this week. We will have to keep an eye on that to see if he can clear the concussion protocol, but as of this recording, he is in it, and we'll have to see how he progresses. But for Dallas, this matchup is going to be risky for a few different reasons. Number one, it's a tough defense. The Eagles are really, really good. And yeah, they gave up quite a few points last week to Jaden Daniels and the Commanders, but Jaden Daniels and Cooper Rush are two completely different quarterbacks. So Cooper Rush doesn't have a really high ceiling this week, and his floor is not great either. The same can be said about Rico Dowdle. He got shut down last week. It can end up happening against Philadelphia again this week, which would be really tough. CeeDee Lamb is going to be a medium risk because we don't even know if he's going to play at this point. It sounds like he's continuing to battle through a shoulder injury, but with Dallas being officially eliminated, they may not want to try and run him back out there this week. We'll have to keep an eye on that. Jake Ferguson is a medium risk no matter what, but he could end up bumping up to a low risk play if CeeDee Lamb ends up being knocked out for the game, because then at that point, who else is Cooper Rush going to throw the ball to? And like I said, Jalen Hurts in the concussion protocol, high risk as of right now. They're going to run the ball an awful lot. Saquon Barkley is a low risk. Kenny Pickett still made A.J. Brown viable. He's a low risk. Devontae Smith had buttery hands. He's going to be a medium risk, and he would be a medium risk no matter what, even if it was Jalen Hurts or Kenny Pickett. But last week, Kenny Pickett didn't even look at the tight end position. So because of that, Grant Calcaterra, he's definitely going to be high risk. The Tampa Bay Bucks made their path to the playoffs way more difficult by losing to the Dallas Cowboys last week. But I hope they are not overlooking Carolina, because Carolina is playing really good football right now, especially Bryce Young. And in this matchup where the secondary for Tampa Bay can be a little bit of an issue, Bryce Young has some fantasy potential. Really only in 2 quarterback or super flex leagues, but he's definitely going to be inside the top 24 this weekend and maybe even inside the top 16. Chuba Hubbard has a little bit more of a difficult matchup. I don't want to make him a high risk play, but we did see Rico Dowdle get shut down by this same run defense for Tampa Bay last week. I wouldn't expect nearly the same outcome that Chuba Hubbard had last week. For the wide receivers, Adam Thielen's going to be a low risk play. He's seeing a lot of targets right now. Bryce Young is locked in on him, but really the wide receiver 2 after that is all up in the air, and Xavier Leggett being hurt doesn't really make anything that more clarified. And then of course with Tommy Tremble, he's high risk because he really hasn't been looked at all season long. Hopefully Tampa Bay comes out with a little bit of fire in themselves this week. If they do, Baker Mayfield is a low-risk start, and so is Mike Evans. He didn't come nearly close enough to the yards needed last week to try and keep pace with making it to 1,000 yards on the season. So do not be shocked if Baker Mayfield is looking his way quite a bit this week to try and get him a little bit closer, so week 18, they can finally get him that 1,000 receiving yards. For the running back position, I definitely have to question what it's going to look like this week. Bucky Irving has been really good. Rachaad White hasn't been all that bad either, but that fumble at the end of the game was extremely costly. Does it cost Rachaad White? some touches. Then we take a look at Jalen McMillan. He continues to score, and really when I look at him, not a high volume player, but he's definitely a guy with some touchdown upside. And then we know Cade Otton has been hurt, and we'll have to keep an eye on later in the week what exactly that looks like for him. There may not be a worse football game to watch this weekend than Tennessee and Jacksonville, but at least we have some fantasy relevance in this game. Mason Rudolph has a little bit of sneaky value this week. The Jacksonville defense is awful. I would like to list one of these Tennessee running backs as a safe start, but I really don't know if we can do that either. Last week, a lot of split touches. Tajay Spears scored a couple of touchdowns. We'll see how this ends up playing out this week, but for right now, because of the split backfield, they're both going to be medium risk, and both of them could be started still. Tony Pollard has a little bit of a better floor. Tajay Spears had a better ceiling. Calvin Ridley's going to be a medium risk for me. He'll see the most overall volume in the passing game. Chiggy Oko is a guy that's going to be a medium risk as well because he definitely has a nice ceiling based on the work that he's had with Mason Rudolph so far this season. NWI, touchdown dependent. If he scores one, you're good. If he doesn't, it's not going to be great. And for Jacksonville, Brian Thomas Jr. is the only low-risk start. We know he is going to get his. And even though he's a low-risk start, I can't put Mac Jones as anything better than a high-risk start. We're not playing him in fantasy football. All we need from him is enough targets to Brian Thomas Jr. As far as the run game goes, Travis Etienne's going to be a high risk. Didn't do a whole lot last week. Not even really utilized in the passing game, but Tank Bigsby scored again. He's a medium risk for me. And then Brenton Strange really let us down last week. All signs pointed to a really heavy volume day, and he couldn't even do that. The reward for least desirable fantasy matchup of the day has to go to Las Vegas and New Orleans. I don't know how you can look at anybody inside this matchup right now, and all the names are on the screen. Brock Bowers is the only guy after this past week that I look at and say, in my fantasy championship, I feel comfortable starting him. Like, Aiden O'Connell could put together decent numbers, but you're not looking at him as a quarterback one. Alexander Madison is a high risk for me still. Amir Abdullah, because of his pass catching ability, he's an okay flex option. I don't know how you can trust either wide receiver from Las Vegas after what we've seen recently. And then from New Orleans, after getting completely just destroyed by Green Bay, I don't know why we would want to start any of these guys either. Maybe Kendre Miller is a little bit closer to medium risk, but all their wide receivers are hurt. MVS ended up missing this past week. Even the even the tight ends weren't all that good this week. So when you take a look at this matchup, Brock Bowers is the only guy that I'm like, yep, I'm good with him. Well, the good news for Miami, they're not technically eliminated from playoff contention as of yet. It doesn't look great, but they still have an opportunity, which means we're still going to have guys out on the field and playing. But also, I'm not 100% sure yet what the weather is going to look like in Cleveland. And we know that Miami has a lot of difficulties playing in cold weather. So it could be a little bit on the warmer side, which would really, really help out Miami. But this is also going to be a late afternoon game. So once the sun starts to go down, it's going to get a little chilly. That's why I don't know if I fully trust anybody in this matchup. Tua is a guy that I would still start. Devon Achane, we're going to start him no matter what. He's getting way too much work in the passing game right now. But that doesn't mean he's not going to be risky. Tyreek Hill, he's going to have a little bit of risk associated with him as well. The only one I don't really hate is going to be Jonnu Smith. I'm all in on Jonnu Smith being just fine in this matchup because at the tight end position, he could only see 5 targets and still be fantastic. So right now, we're going to keep an eye on the weather. If we see it's going to be sunny and at least a little bit warm out, if the wind isn't too bad and the wind chill doesn't drop it down, then Miami could end up being just fine. But Miami on the road in December doesn't always work out all that great. DTR looked awful last week, and we got a ton of questions about Jerry Jeudy's been fantastic. How can you guys not put him inside your top 36 wide receivers? This is why right here. We knew DTR would be okay getting David Njoku the ball. He's done it before. But the passing game, especially the deep pass, just doesn't work with DTR. Maybe they go back to Jameis Winston this week. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Jerome Ford, though, he's a low-risk play for me. I definitely think they're going to run the ball with him. They're going to dump it off to him. Miami's defense is tough, especially when it comes to the pass. So I wouldn't be shocked if Jerome Ford sees 5, 6, 7, maybe even up to 10 targets this week. I think Green Bay and Minnesota has an opportunity to be an absolute offensive slugfest. Jordan Love is a low risk play for me. Josh Jacobs is a low risk play for me. All the wide receivers are a high risk play. And here is why. Because will one of these guys hit? Probably. Will two of these guys hit? More than likely. Will three of these guys hit? Probably not. Will all four of them hit? No, they won't. But who? Who will be the guy that hits? Who's going to be the guy that gets the most targets? Who's going to be the guy that scores the touchdown? Who's going to be the guy that has the most receiving yards? Typically this season, one of these four guys gets left out. Dontavian Wicks scored a touchdown this past week. Jaden Reed had a huge play down the field, so he had a little bit more fantasy validity. But when you take a look at who is going where and doing what and having the most upside and the best floor, they're all high risk because you really can't figure it out on a weekly basis. Tucker Kraft will be a medium risk for me, though, because in this matchup with Minnesota that could have a lot of points, he's the one guy at the one position on this team that I feel like we could count on for a few targets. And for Minnesota, the pass catching game definitely is going to be a low risk play for me. Sam Darnold should end up being fine. Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson should end up being fine. Jordan Addison's upside is a little bit lower than what it has been as of recent, but I don't think it's awful by any means. Justin Jefferson is solid. Aaron Jones going up against his former team, I think he's going to end up playing just fine. And even TJ Hawkinson could see more than enough targets to still be viable for those of you that really have nobody else to count on. We already saw Caleb Williams go toe-to-toe with Jaden Daniels and lose. Will Michael Penix have a different outcome this week? The Atlanta offense feels like it has a little bit more pep in its step with Michael Penix at quarterback. He's a medium risk play for me. Bijan Robinson, even if Michael Penix wasn't at quarterback, would still be a low-risk start, but I think it makes him even better and gives him more upside because the passing game has a little bit more respect. Drake London, I would like to give him a low-risk rating and put Darnell Mooney at medium risk, but we don't know a whole lot about Drake London and his potential injury right now, so I'm going to switch it. I'm going to put Darnell Mooney as a low risk. I'm going to put Drake London as a medium risk. And if I have to watch Kyle Pitts throw the ball to a defender in the end zone one more time, I swear you'll never hear me say his name on this channel ever again. The Jaden Daniels-Terry McLaurin connection definitely could do some damage against Atlanta this week. The run game is going to be a little bit of a concern, though, because Atlanta's run defense is very solid. Brian Robinson is at a medium risk and not a high risk for me, though, because he's going to get a majority of the work. And if this game remains close, then we definitely could see him get a few more carries this week and maybe be a little bit more successful than what he was last week. At the wide receiver position outside of Terry McLaurin, I'll give Olamide Zaccheaus a little bit of a shot this week. I really don't want to start him in any fantasy matchup, and if you are in a bad way. But for me personally, when I take a look at what he did this past week, and knowing this game could remain close and Jaden Daniels is going to have to keep throwing it, Zaccheaus has earned a few more targets. Jamison Crowder didn't have as many targets last week, though, so he goes to high risk. And Zach Ertz, who definitely has been getting some targets leading into this game, kind of got left behind for the wide receivers. That's why he's going to be a high risk for me heading into this matchup. Not only could there be a lot of overall points scored in this matchup, but there could be a lot of fantasy points as well. And that's why Detroit at San Francisco on Monday Night Football is going to be my Manscaped must-watch matchup of the week. There is so much potential in this game for a lot of different fantasy outcomes to be changed. There's going to be a lot of people that are going to have guys in this matchup on Monday night that could either swing some wins or some losses. And I'm absolutely going to be locked into this matchup the same way Manscaped should be locked in as a part of your daily self-care. And right now over on manscaped.com, you can use code word headliners20 to get 20% off your entire order and free shipping. And the amount of amazing tools that they have available to you on their website is absolutely insane. It is one of the #1 grooming places to go on the internet right now. Headliners20, 20% off your entire order and free shipping. For the Detroit Lions, I'm okay to start basically everybody. Now, Jared Goff's going to be a safe start. He's putting up MVP-like numbers, and I know people aren't really talking about it, and they might say I'm crazy. I'm not saying he should win the MVP, but he is putting up MVP-like numbers and should be talked about a little bit more. Jahmyr Gibbs by himself, great last week. Will be strong again this week. Amon-Ra St. Brown, he's got a very high floor every single week. Jameson Williams, he's got a high ceiling, and remember what he did to San Francisco last year? Absolutely blew the top off them and had a big run play as well. And Sam Laporta, he's being looked at way more often now than he was earlier in the season. And for San Francisco, Brock Purdy's going to be a low-risk play for me. He definitely has a lot of potential. With a banged-up secondary, Juwan Jennings has a low-risk rating. George Kittle has a low-risk rating. Now, the running game I want to stay away from. Isaac Guerrero, we have no idea yet if he's going to be able to play. And Patrick Taylor wasn't all that impressive last week. And against this Lions run defense, they were really solid against DeAndre Swift once again. I don't want to trust either of these guys. Deebo Samuel, he finally showed up for the first time in a while last week, and it would not be shocking to kind of see the same thing again this week, knowing that the linebacking core for the Detroit Lions and a lot of the athleticism they are missing there will not be able to really help out over the middle of the field. There you have it, Headliner Nation. It's a short week for us here, and I'm really sorry that during championship week, you've got games so early in the week that we had to put out quicker content. Definitely would have loved to go a little bit more in depth and try to do a few more things for you this week, but unfortunately, time frame just does not allow it. I've got family on Christmas Eve. I'm not working on Christmas Day, and that's when games start, so we had to get everything out by Monday evening, and everything will be posted by Tuesday evening here on the channel. So my apologies once again. Write a letter to the NFL commissioner, though, and let him know how stupid Christmas Day games are when it's a freaking Wednesday. But good luck to everybody this week. I'm going to try to fit a live show in for a little bit towards the end of the week before Sunday games kick off. Hopefully that can help some of you out. But if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. Members, tag us in Discord. For now, though, Headliner Nation, I'll see you all later. Stay safe and healthy. Enjoy your Christmas holiday, and I'll see you on the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.